Hey friends, and welcome back for another episode of Gone Gwenting. Today we're going to cover two main things. Number one, the new journey guide, how that works, whether or not it's important, how much you should care. And two, we're going to cover seasonal mode. This time and this season is the elf seasonal. So we're going to talk a little bit about what those seasonals mean, whether or not you want to do them, how they might impact your pro ranking, and also some specifics of how you do want to pay attention to with the elf seasonal is how the cards work, what the rules are, and then also, because I'm a naturalist, I just want to create a deck that is for the elves specifically. So, journey guide. If you pop up your main screen now, you'll see four options. As usual, the other three are there: play, arena, and deck builder. And then there is now a journey one between deck builder and arena. So if we open that up, you can see there's a standard and there's a premium. So you can unlock premium for $10, or you can jump ahead 25 levels, which will get you all of those benefits you've seen. And it will give you all the benefits from the top row as well as the bottom row if you get that additional 25 levels. I'm a bit of a cheapskate, so I only bought the $10 version. But one thing I like in here, there's this new Geralt leader avatar that you can utilize. He has his own sayings that he has. He also can be customized. Plus you have your top corner avatar that can be changed. You saw the little mini bobblehead Geralt, wolf mask Geralt, and just a whole bunch of different options you have. You can change his swords, you can change his costume. So if you really want to use him, get in on it. For me personally, I really like this game. I just wanted to sponsor them, and I really love the back of card artwork that they have on the bottom row. Although I do have to say, tracksuit Geralt avatar is something special. So anyway, you just want to come in here, and you can also read. So Dandelion is top row. He's free for everyone. Now I think everyone who is playing is going to get these benefits. You just have to win rounds. It'll show you at the top of the screen how many rounds you have to win. For me, I believe it's 24 for the first few levels. So if you win a game, that's 2 rounds that are won every game that you win, or 1 round won if you only win 1 of 3 and you lose. So you can still make progress even when you lose. But let's whip open the journey guide here. I want to look at the 3 new seasonal journeys that they have. I always like to work on these as early as I can into the season because some of the gated quests are difficult to do. So you have to really pay attention to what the rewards are and what the requirements are. So I always jump through, look to see what they're giving you. This one, they usually break them down by borders, avatars, and card backs. And I love the card backs. I love the art of them. I love how interactive they are in the middle of the game, and I find that the card back art is the prettiest in my opinion. So Ide Emin Ebzivni, you can see has her own avatar at the end as the final reward. Aileron, on the other hand, has elf card back. So I already know this is the one I'm going to work on. I just want to check it out. So it looks like you can get some base set kegs. You can get a Doblathan Archer. You can also get some scraps depending on which way you decide to go. And then finally, Season of the Elves. This is another border reward quest that you can do. You can get the Neophyte border, base set kegs, and some other events. So, and we can break down exactly how you accomplish each of these objectives. And if you have questions, please post them in the comments. I know some of the stuff isn't well described. Right now, for example, I'm working on an Aileron quest that says play 4 games in any game mode. Turns out how the quest actually works is win 4 games in a row in any game mode, which is quite a bit more difficult. I've found myself winning 2 or 3 and then losing the 4th one or the 3rd one. It's highly frustrating. So right now I'm going to pop open Aileron and get started in this video. I've recorded this over the weekend and have since progressed a little bit further in this. Obviously playing matches generally is a pretty easy one to do. You just got to whip them open and play them. So right now, let's get into the seasonal aspect of this. So the Season of the Elves is whenever you play a unit from your hand, play a unit with the same provision cost from your deck. Your starting deck is doubled in size at the start of the match. A couple of things I've realized here for those building other decks. Your starting deck is still your starting deck, so it does not count the doubled cards as part of your starting deck. Huge advantage for assimilate cards and Nilfgaard if you want to play that way. Spying cards can also be beneficial for that. And also importantly for cards that require a certain number of cards or require that there be no duplicates, for example, those functions operate solely off of what was previously done. So there were also some changes to the cards here. So if you've seen any of my previous videos, you know that I love Elves. I had built a Deadeye as a Vernoisil deck that I've been using a lot. So because of some changes to the provision costs of cards, they know this deck no longer qualified. And so I'm just coming in here to look at what we have, see if I could reform this deck a little bit. But first thing I want to do, I just want to go all in on Elves. I had not been able to get this in Zaid Saber from the Merchants of Ophir expansion, so I wanted to throw that in here. I felt like this could give me a bit of an advantage in some decks, especially when I want to play Isengrim de Folitana, who boosts all elves by 1. Scoia'tael Neophyte is really helpful for that. So they've also added a new leader ability, Mahakam Forge. I'm a fan of elves right now. Right, I've built a lot of elven cards, so that's what I'm going to stick with. Deadeye Ambush, I think, still gives me a big edge here. And one card that they definitely did change after this too was Elves. So again, I'm going to use my Waylay, Vernoisil. I think those two cards are two of the best combo cards in the game, to be honest. You can get those Elven Deadeyes and then play Vernoisil and do 2 damage for each of them. So Elves now, instead of boosting all boosted characters by 1, damaging all damaged characters by 1, actually will destroy an allied card and then spawn 2 Deadeyes. So he's a great play. So Isengrim I just described. Ailerin, who I played before, she will be called from your deck as soon as you have 5 elves in play to the melee row. So you want to make sure she has room there. And then Yavin does 1 damage for each elf unit in the row, including himself, notably. Then we have Waylay here. Melina will move will move a character from one row to the other. She works really well with Doblathana Sentry, who can either boost your units if posted in the rear when they move, or can damage the enemy when moved to the front. So when I first made this deck, and I'd first been using it, and that's the one I'm going to cover right now, I really wanted to spread out these elves, and I like to think when I want to create a really competitive deck that I need 2 ways to win around. I think both for odds of drawing cards, but also because you need to win 2 rounds. So what I found one way to win pretty easily with elves, actually, and surprise people in the early 2 rounds, is with traps. So I have opted to use the Elven Commando here in order, because she gets some really great benefits from traps. Every time a trap is sprung, she gains 2 points. So, and in this one, remember in this mode, whenever you play someone from a certain provision cost, you are going to get to play another card of that same provision cost. So you want to keep an eye on that bottom number, that bottom right number. That's the provision cost of a card. So, and you can also see on the left side, you can see how many points the card is worth in play, and then next to that is the provision cost of the card as well. So as I mentioned before, I wanted to get traps set up. So Mahakam Horn I think is fantastic. I love the spring traps as well. You can put them down. They take 2 rounds to spring, so you put them down in 1 turn, and then the next turn you put down those Elven Commandos, and then the traps will go off at the end of that turn, damage the enemy's row with the most units by 2 each, and then will boost those commandos by an additional 2 points. So it was a great sequential play, and most people are afraid to play artifact destroying cards on traps because of Serpent Trap, which whenever there's a special card play will destroy their biggest unit, and so they don't really, you can't ever be sure. Also, Pitfall Trap will just do damage one at a time by the value of the provision cost of the card played. So if they play a really good card after you play Pitfall Trap, it will do a bunch of damage to a bunch of different cards. So finally, getting in here for spawn, I just want to make sure we're covered to get as many Elven Deadeyes out as possible. Really beneficial with Vernwasil, who's really the leader of this deck. She's that 12 provision count card. She can spawn 2 Elven Deadeyes in the ranged row, which makes her a net 5+3+3, which is an 11-point card. Or alternatively, you can have her played in the melee row and do 2 damage each for each of the Deadeyes. So if you have 5 Deadeyes, she will be worth 5 points on your side and then do up to 10 damage to the enemy side. And it is random, so it can get around defenders as well too. So it's a pretty good card. The only downside is if the card has an odd number and it ends up destroying it, you will do reduced damage, right? So if they have 3 health and you do attack them twice, what would have been a total of 4 damage is now only 3 damage, but still a great card to play. And if you get more Deadeyes, like I've had up to 8 Deadeyes, you can do a crazy amount of damage, 16 damage possible. So just something to keep your mind on. So just finessing this deck a little bit, I need to make sure I have at least my 4 traps. It looks like I'm going to work in 5 here, 1 Hack'em Horn, 1 Pitfall Trap, 2 of the Spring Traps, and then 1 of those basic traps that you start off with in your starting deck. So looks like I've rounded it out. I have 25 cards, 16 of those are unit cards when 13 are required, and no provisions. So something I do want to add, after I made this deck, you might not want to copy it exactly, because the only thing that's doubled, the only thing that allows, sorry, let me take it back. All of your cards are doubled when you start in the seasonal mode, but while all of your cards are doubled, the only ones that will allow you to play a card of the same provision cost are actually the unit cards. So artifacts like my traps and special cards like Waylay will not spawn an additional card that you can play immediately. So but at the same time, one of the problems I also ran into with this, and others have run into as well, is your side gets filled up very quickly. So spies can actually be really good for this. You can fill up the enemy's side with worthless units for them that just take up space that they're not able to get rid of, because there's very few cards that will attack your own units outside of the Svalbard cards or Skellige. So you can really get locked in, and some cards like Dryad Maiden, for example, which moves to the end of the row and then boosts the unit to the left of it, won't work because there's nowhere to move. There needs to be an empty spot in order for movement to occur, even if there's not a unit being added or removed from that row. So just something to keep in mind if you're thinking about doing it. So it looks like our first round here is up against monsters. I've seen a lot of monsters decks, and I found that elves have been a pretty strong counter to monsters. I think a large part of this are those elven swordsmen you see right now. I have 3 of those in hand. I do want to keep as many of those as possible just because they are so helpful to have in an elven deck, right? So they have a 2-turn cooldown on an order that does 1 damage, and then that cooldown is reduced every time you play an elf. So you can actually get 2 damage out of each of them each turn. But let's see what this guy played. So he plays down Fiend, so he boosts all Death Wish cards in his hand, and then he has Curse Scroll, which allows him to look at 3 cards, choose 1, and then discard 1 from his hand, which is a great card. But what I want to do here is 2 cards I like to start off with in this hand are Trains. So this Elven Swordsman, it looks like I got a second one here, so I get to play down 2 Elven Swordsmen, have to wait till the next turn to use their order, but from here on out, every turn I get to do 1 damage each with each of them, and if I get lucky and play down 2 Elves in that same turn, their cooldown is going to be reduced not once, but twice, so they'll actually be able to use their attacks twice. So he plays down Archspore, kind of a crappy card, but here does 2 random damage, so he can't choose who it attacks. But I want to make sure not to kill them because they'll damage a unit by 2 randomly, which would kill off my swordsman. So I need to just keep them safe, and I'm just going to keep laying down swordsmen. And then looks like because of the same provision cost, I also get Deadeye of Vernocel's Commando, who is going to boost herself every turn that I only have elves on my side of the board, or I have Vernocel as well. So she's a great card to have to just generate you passive points without having to do literally anything else. So he has Toad Prince, great play. Toad Prince will consume a unit on the other side of the board instead of just your own, so it can be a great attack card. So he'll boost himself by the amount of points he consumes. Very frustrating to work against. So look, he then plays K Ramdown, who has 3 charges with an order that allows him to consume units. So he consumed both those Arch Spores and did 2 random damage, killed off one of my swordsmen again. But like you saw just there, again, I played 2 elves in 1 turn, got the cooldown reduced. That elven swordsman was able to do 2 damage just in 1 turn. So that's why he's been targeting them. He or she, I suppose, is targeting those elven swordsmen because they do passive damage to him every turn. But those commandos on my ranged row are getting me points each turn. They're not getting me 2 each, but they are giving me 1 point each, and soon they'll be too hard for him to take down. So one thing I do, there's one card in the monster deck, notably Glusty Warp, who will eat all 1 point cards and boost himself by 2 points each. So I do like to get rid of those drones. They can also be used by griffins, as you saw before. The griffins have to kill the lowest unit available in the row, and they are worth 8 points. So we just want to clear out the smallest cards on his row, since there's nothing else that I can do to change his dominance position, right? So his 12-point card is higher than mine, so if he plays down a dominance card, he's going to get that benefit. There's nothing that I can do about that quite yet. Alright, so he plays down Harpy's Egg. Great card, everybody starts with in their deck. Actually one of my favorites. I think not as appreciated as it probably should be. So Flater he plays down afterward. He does not consume, but he does give himself vitality. And then the Death Wish of that Harpy's Egg is going to spawn a Harpy, which he immediately consumed with his with those dogs, Barbaghese. Alright, now let's get our traps working. So I wanted to wait for him to get more than just one unit down on the row. That way I can get as much damage as possible. So we throw down that trap, and this is that same trap, that spring trap I was telling you before, that takes 2 turns in order to go off. And then this is also what I was worried about before. That's why I was killing those drones. But I would rather him destroy a Andrega larvae than a drone because of that, because of the armor and the Thrive that they have. So Thrive will give him a point every time he plays a unit that's higher than them. Great to play in this seasonal mode because you can play 2 cards at once. So again, I just want to try to reduce the top points of those cards, just so if he plays a dominance card, I think like Immerlith or Immerlith's Wrath are 2 really good examples of that. And I already knew I was going to knock down that Barbaghese by 2 points because of that spring trap. You saw me get 2 of those commandos out. So now instead of only 4 points, there were 6 points, and I did 10 total damage to his units in that row. Also why I brought down the armor of that Andrega larva. You might have thought, oh, that's just wasted points, why are you bothering with that? I really wanted to get them off the board as quickly as possible. Alright, I'm up by 9, he's at 3 cards, I'm at 4, and as soon as I pass, I get 3 passive points. So I'm good to just quit here, let it go. He has to play at least a 9-point play here to stay alive, because he has that because he still has that vitality on his Flater in the front row. He will be able to take the win with only 9 points. But he way overshoots it here. He plays his Catachan to get a second Catachan. Fantastic card, especially if you have a consume card as a deploy ability. That will actually count as a higher unit card. So it has a high base value to also have Thrive at 6, but if you play your Celano Harpy, which everybody starts out with, you'll be able to consume a card, As long as it's worth 2 or more, that'll get you to 7 or higher, and then that will also boost that Ekimara as well, and give you, or sorry, Katakan as well, and give him an additional point. So great card to use. He now looks like he's going after this turn. I'm not sure why he made this choice. He was already down 5 to 7. I need to win this, but his goal should try to be to narrow the gap of my card advantage as much as possible. And since he played that Endrega, he doesn't get its normal benefit of being able to consume an insect and spawn a drone. So he's only at 7. I play my Neophytes, get 4 of them out. I'm at 8. He has no passive gains. I have no passive gains, but I'm now in the lead. So one thing I do want to do, if at all possible, is make sure to maintain that lead. That way I can maintain my card advantage. I don't want to have to play from behind. So as you see, I beat him by 1 point. That's all you need. 7 to 8. And I got rid of 2 4 provision cost cards from my deck that I no longer have to worry about drawing, which is always a great position to be in. So again, we got the Elven Commando, we have a trap, we also have Mahakam Horn, but I just want to get rid of that trap in hopes of getting that card. Perfect. Yorvith's Gambit is fantastic, one of my favorite cards for Elves. It will, if you start with 4 more traps in your deck, it will let you play 2 of them at random. So it will randomly select 2 of your traps, and then you can play both of those. Alright, so when getting started with Elves can be a little bit tricky, right? So right now, I don't know what those 2 random traps are going to be. There's a decent chance that they end up being spring traps to get that extra round. They were not, so now I'm going to miss out on those points. I probably should have played down my Commando first, but we are where we are. So it looks like he plays down Harpy's Egg, which is a great one to play down onto traps, because as soon as I kill it, it will still spawn the 5-point Harpy from out of it. And both of those, the second trap was totally wasted there. Had I had my Elven Commando down, she would have been boosted by 2 for each of those, so she would have gone up to 8 points. And if I was lucky enough to have the other one played, that would have been an additional 4 points there. So I could have had 16 points on the board, but I played that in the wrong order. Live and learn. Alright, so now I get down my half-elf hunter to get that Deadeye. I can spawn 3 Deadeyes at any time. He randomly drew Malena, which allows me to move his units between rows. I like to do that just to mess with them, if nothing else. People start worrying that you have some kind of game plan with moving them all to the same row, especially after I played that spring trap at first. So he's going to over-consolidate his units, probably faster than he should. He's using all the consumes as quickly as he can, and that can be dangerous. You don't want your cards all to be all the points focused in only a couple of cards, because the Geralt that everyone starts their decks with will kill a 9-point card off the get-go, and in this double deck, if you play that Geralt, you have a very good chance that you will draw your other Geralt if he's the only other 10-point card, and you can kill both of his 9-point cards. So something he should have been a little bit more aware of. Also, he's getting a little smarter here, so remember how I mentioned that you want to play that Endrega Warrior between 2 insects, because then you'll consume both of them and then spawn a drone each for each of them. So using Endrega Warriors to consume 2 drones is a fantastic play. It really gives you a net 6. So next thing here, we're gonna throw down 2 more traps. We can get that Pitfall Trap in here. That is a great card to play when you are expecting them to play a really high value card. Honestly, I just need to thin him out a little bit. I have some better cards that I have ready to rock in my hand. I just am saving them for a little later. So Pitfall Trap is usually best to be played as kind of like second to last. That Griffin is only 5 points, so it only does 5 damage at random. I also, if I know I'm going to be filling out my deck, I like to keep my Mahakam Horns on the edge. That way people don't destroy them with Artifact Destroyers, because Mahakam Horns really are such great tricky ones. Unless I have a bunch of other traps already down, then I can be confident that he doesn't have something that can destroy artifacts and get rid of that Mahakam. So there we go, we get boosted another 2, really strong damage there, right? So he had 6 cards, none of them with defense, shield, armor, anything like that. So we just get a solid across the board 12 damage. Barbagezi is a good card for him to play later that will consolidate a lot of his points into those 2 cards. No, also for monsters, it makes him vulnerable to resets like Geralt Yrden, that you can play to just reset those units back down to their base score. So if he uses those Barbagazis to get up to 24 points each, and you just throw down a Geralt Yrden, they'll go both down back to 6. So something that he should be aware of, and if I was him, I probably would have tried to split my units up between different rows if possible. Alright, Elias was having some weird difficulties on the first day. So when I played this, Elias can destroy that 1 card, and then I get 2 Deadeyes, so that makes him 6 minus 1, 5 points plus another 6. So he's a net 11 point play at a 9 point provision card cost. So I liked the old Elias. He always just seemed to, and I agreed with the feedback to the devs on this, he was like an end game card that required an end game player be played before it, right? So you needed to boost all of your units with Isengrim, for example, and damage all of their units with Vernosil in order to play him to get the best benefit. Otherwise, you risk the chance of boosting all of your enemies' boosted units, like with monsters that are doing consumes, and damaging your own units who are being kind of passively damaged by some of those Arch Spores or other cards. So I really like the consistency out of this new Elias, and also how well he goes with Vernosil, which unfortunately I wasn't able to draw, but she is my favorite card, as I've mentioned, in the Elven decks. I really like Yorvith's Gambit, but I think Vernosil is better, and she's 1 provision count, costs less. So now we're going to throw down Yavin. Looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 points, including him. But I'm going to get rid of those Barbagazis. Even though I could get rid of more points, I just don't want him to be able to trigger Death Wish abilities of some unit in his hand. Also, every time a unit gets destroyed, those Vrans are getting boosted by 1. Ran out of room though, so I have 4 damage that I can do here. But again, those Vrans are still going to get boosted by 1 each. So just want to get rid of those boosts. Alright, we're in the end game now. He's got 1 more card to play. He can drop down 2 more drones from his leader ability. We still have 3 more Deadeye commandos that we could spawn, but we're not going to be able to because there's no room left. But he still does have a significant advantage in the fact that he still has 1 card left, and he is going to be able to juice up some points here if he makes some wise choices. But he no longer has any more Death Wish cards, so that Vran is really only his only passive boost he's getting from his actions. But yes, so there you go. So this is that dominance card I was worried about. Although Imrlith, I find I rarely use his dominance ability. Dropping down another unit to 7 on the opponent's side when you have dominance seems like a difficult thing to do. So he just passed. My Mahakam Horn just got triggered. That boosts each of the units on each side by 4 points. So that's 8 point play from that Mahakam Horn. Then we throw down Isengrim. All of my elf units just got boosted by 1. I put down the other one. They all get boosted again. We just made some incredible gains in points right there. Came from behind for a big win. Those Imrlith cards was a great final play for him. Like I mentioned before, he just boosted 2 cards by 6 each. But right here, you just saw one of the big problems. Having card advantage in this new seasonal can be a bit weird. You might not be able to actually play your extra card. You can still do the actions, though, if you want to move units, or if you have those Elven swordsmen you want to do damage with, but that's just a big taste of the seasonal. No, I have considerably changed that deck. I got rid of traps. I focused more on moving cards, Doblothana swordsmen, and Dryad matrons. But that was my first step on that journey. Working towards getting some keys every day there for accomplishing wins in every round. but just want to focus a little bit more on some of the different things I can do with this deck. And I hope that you guys will post any questions you have, and make sure to let me know if there's anything that I can improve on in my further videos. So one thing I did want to add, as soon as I finished this one, I thought immediately, oh, you know, like, look, those traps had a weird effect. I wasn't able to play a second Eorvith's Gambit. You can only play one at a time. But I still just love Deadeye Ambush. I love how it works with Vernwa Seal, with that random 2 damage each. But I also love how it works with Isengrim in order to get all of those units boosted by 1 each. And I also love how it works with Yavin, where you can do damage by each elf in that row. And those 3 cards alone are great kind of pseudo finisher cards. I think Isengrim being able to be played twice in a row. If you could have, so you can have 9 total cards on each row, right? So if you had 8 on each, 16 cards, you play 1 Isengrim, 16 points right there. You play second Isengrim and you get the 16 plus the other Isengrim boosted. Plus, Isengrim will boost himself for every elf played, so it's actually an 18-point play after that. So you get 2 Isengrims, final end point of the game. That's 36 points that 34 points. I can do math. 18 plus 16, 34 points that you played in 1 round, which is just an incredible smackdown at the end of the game. And being able to drop those Elven Deadeyes specifically where you want them on your own rows at 3 points each is a net 9-point play. You still get 15. Provision, extra provision points. So I think it's just a great leader ability. So Brocklin Sentinels, you know, they're all right. Just kind of wrapping up looking at this deck again. The Pyrotechnician they changed used to destroy an allied artifact and then damage an enemy unit by 2 with a 2-round cooldown. It was really helpful for just clearing out used traps on your side. Can't do that anymore. Oriel does not destroy your own artifacts. Primordial Diao does not. None of these cards anymore destroy your own artifacts except for Dancing Star and Dimeridium Bomb. So that's something, I mean, if I was giving any feedback to the devs, I think that's something that really should be built back into Elven Traps, is the ability to get them cleared off your side. I mean, Traps is such a fun deck. It's really not meta. The only exception I might say is you can totally trick someone in the second round. You've put down a Mahakam Horn, and then you play a spawn card of some type. I really like Half-Elf Hunter because he has Harmony, so they're kind of expecting you to play something else. And then they make a big play to get the lead, and you act like, oh no, I've lost. You just pass, then they pass, and then you get the 8-point boost, which is just massive for only 2 cards out on the board to get an 8-point boost. With those other 2 cards, that gives you 14 total points in just a 2-card play, both of which do not, at least to the opponent, look like major cards that are going to cause them problems. So, I mean, I think that there was more artifact destroying. I think like Oriel was reconfigured to kind of clear these big progression artifacts off the board, but I just, you know, there needs to be some way to help elves out a little bit here. I mean, like Ibier, for example, will play a bronze trap from the from the graveyard, but that's it. Like he can't reuse one that's on the board. The only exception to that is Eorvith, who will replay a trap, put it back in the hand, and then you can play one from your hand. So it doesn't even necessarily need to be the same trap. But he is a high value card, and provision cost wise, I believe he's 9 provision cost, with only 3 vitality, or 3 endgame points. And so I think like he's good if you can use him on Mahakam Horn, and that's about it. Otherwise, you know, if you get Springtrap, yeah, that can be good if they've filled up their entire side of the board and damaging them is beneficial to you. I think of Skellige as an example. It's sometimes they actually want you to damage them. Draco Turtle is a good example. He gets boosted every time he gets damaged. That's one of my first videos on Draco Turtle, who has also been, in my opinion, improved not only improved, but they reduce his provision cost. So that's a great card to go out there and get if you're interested in doing that, especially with Svalbard Berserkers and Svalbard. Some of the other cards they have, the Primal Ravage now is far more beneficial, since when you spawn those Svalbard Abominations, they're now worth 6 points instead of just 5. So, yeah, definitely get in on that. And then Sarasan Crate now is a great match for that as well. So anyway, made some changes to that deck. Bounced back out there. Sorry, kind of rambled on here just in my own monologue, but really want to try to get a lot of this information out to you guys. Very excited about Journey. I love that even on the free side of this, is you just play more games, you are gonna get more keys. And keys, as I've talked about in all my contract videos, are the key to getting more cards, right? The more keys you have, the more rewards you can buy. Notably ore, which will allow you every 100 ore you can go buy kegs. You can now get faction specific kegs. You can get also the expansion kegs, so whether it be base set, Crimson Curse, Iron Judgment, or Novigrad, or also the Merchants of Ophir, you can get each of those kegs and open those up, and you get 5 cards every time, right? With the middle card being a choice between 3 different cards. And if you are new to this game, I will tell you the way to have more fun is to open more kegs. You are going to be able to get a lot more cards. You're going to mix up your decks. You're going to be able to try new things out. And as you try new things out, you will better understand why people do what they do. And it will be more fun for you to respond and play in turn with other people. And I think that that's really what the key to this game is. Anyway, I've kind of gone on for way too long, but really wanted to get into this and talk more about Seasonal, talk more about Season of the Elves. Looking forward to participating more in Journey. And just remember, guys, especially as we're all trying to keep safe and stay inside, you can always get out there and go gwenting.